Hi everyone, this video will give a quick recap of this week's readings about the beginning of the Communist Revolution in China in the 1930s. And at the end, I'll pose a couple questions for you to think about regarding the primary source documents we were assigned to read. The CCP was basically dying in the 1920s. To the rightists in the Kuomintang Party, it looked like the communists were trying to take over. Chiang Kai-shek led coups in 1926 and 1927 that left the Communist Party in shambles. The Comintern, however, helped rebuild the party, and it actually became even stronger than before. This strengthening probably had a lot to do with new party leaders and new party members. The new leaders were less grounded in traditional China, and there was a large influx of peasant members into the party. With these changes, it's not surprising that there were changes in policies and approaches to the revolution, which I'll touch on more later in this video. The communists at this time had retreated to bases in rural China when Chiang Kai-shek was leading his coups. It was in these rural areas that Mao Zedong predicted that hundreds of millions of peasants will rise with the fury of a hurricane. No force, no matter how strong, can restrain them. Seeing this potential in the peasants, Mao sought to expand the Communist Red Army along with Zhu Di, another prominent member of the CCP. They saw the success of Kuomintang's army, so they sought to mirror that success. Other members of the CCP, however, did not have faith in peasantry to create an uprising, since Marxism stresses an uprising of the urban proletariat. Members of the CCP, such as Li Lisan, thought that the urban proletariat had to be mobilized and then supported by the Red Army for a communist revolution to work. However, due to power struggles between Li and 28 Bolsheviks, a group supporting Stalin's China policy, this urban proletariat movement collapsed, and many of the city CCP members moved out to the Jiangxi Soviet base, where Mao was beginning a land revolution. Mao's land revolution was basically the confiscation and redistribution of land. This was an extremely time-consuming and complicated process. The hardest part was classifying peasants into correct social groupings. The term rich peasant was probably the most debated term, but even so, peasants were being reclassified constantly to the point where one day they could be considered a poor peasant, the next day a rich peasant, and the next day a middle peasant. The project started to become very unpopular among the locals that it was supposed to help, and it led to Mao discontinuing the project only to put into effect the Kuomintang land. Chiang Kai-shek feared this mobilization of the Communist Party, so he started campaigns to defeat the Communists once and for all. On the fifth campaign, launched in October 1933, the Kuomintang were successful in cutting off supply lines and forcing the Communists to retreat. This led to a long march in mid-October 1934. It was a 368-day forced march of 6,000 miles. 86,000 started the journey, and only 8,000 reached the final destination. Even though the long march was the result of a defeat for the Communist Party, it is often looked at as a victory. It is a story of survival, and those who did survive felt a duty and dedication to the Communist mission. The Communists continued to defend themselves after a long march against Chiang's forces in what is called the 3-Year War. The war may have actually been helpful to the Communists because it forced them to make bases in different parts of China and spread their doctrine, making it a national movement, which was an ultimate goal of the Communist Party. The party eventually ended up in Yunnan. From this point, the Communist Party was able to expand and rise up. So, taking into account this recap in the primary source readings, I would like you to think about these questions for recitation. Shanghai, which we read about in Li, prospered under Western capitalist structures. Why then was communism still appealing to many Chinese people at this time, even though they were seeing modernization take place in Shanghai? Number 2. In reading Chopa, the question I kept asking myself was, which event or policy made the rise of the Communist Party inevitable? Does Edgar Snow add any variables to this question that Chopa does not address? Think of some of the events and policies that Chopa mentioned that led to their rise. Number 3. Mao's revolutionary doctrine is very extremist in its rhetoric. As mentioned in the brief synopsis before the doctrine, such a condoning of extremism is contrary to the dominant strain in Chinese thought. Why do you think the Chinese people accepted this extremism under Mao? Thank you for listening.